Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breakthrough Ideas in the Spotlight. Boy, do I have a treat for you today. I am going to be talking with Jeanne Kraft and Kirk Allen. They are the Edgar County Watchdogs. Edgar County is a central Illinois county, and these two veterans have had fun for the last 8 years correcting problems at the local level. I have worked with Jeanne and Kirk on a number of issues, not only as a state representative, but even afterwards. These two gentlemen actually are heroes, in my opinion. They have done more to take care of corruption in this state than Lisa Madigan, Mike Madigan, any attorney general in the past, the media, you name it. These guys have taken on some really tough cases and shown the malfeasance that's happened at the local level. And in my book, they are heroes. They're also award winners. They won the State Policy Network Award for their work as watchdogs at the local level. So I'm going to welcome onto the program Kirk Allen and Jeanne Kraft. Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for coming on.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, let's just get started here because one of the biggest things that we worked on together was the College of DuPage scandal under Dr. Bruder. And unfortunately, that happened back in 2014 and then moved into 2015, and lawsuits ensued from that. And I know that those lawsuits are continuing today. And part of the reason is because you two uncovered a lot of the malfeasance. Much of your work was picked up by both the Daily Herald and the Chicago Tribune, at which point they could not deny your impact on this particular case. And in fact, they did cover articles really about your work at the local level. But you know what, let me go back just a bit here. Kirk, could you tell us, your work has been going on for what, about the last 8 years?
Well, actually, we started in 2010, and then we incorporated the actual organization, Edgar County Watchdogs, in 2011.
Okay, so give me an idea about how you and Jeanne got started with your work. You didn't really know each other prior to getting involved with this.
No, we didn't. Actually, I got started over a 911 call. I'm a volunteer firefighter and EMT, and we got a call for an 11-day-old baby not breathing. And for me, we risk little to save little, risk a lot to save a lot. So I'm driving 100 miles an hour to get to the ambulance to get to this call. When I get there, the child is fine. It's in a 16-year-old mother's arms, and it's screaming bloody murder. If he's screaming, he's breathing. But when I called dispatch to find out why they said the child was not breathing and why someone didn't initiate infant CPR, I was told they don't do that, which just blew me away. That's just the most basic thing in medical dispatch. So I went to my first public meeting, which was our 911 board, and I asked if our dispatchers were certified. It took about 15 minutes, and they finally said all of our dispatchers are trained. I didn't ask if they were trained. I asked if they were certified. My first FOIA, Freedom of Information request, was to the Department of Public Health, and we broke out that our 911 center had not licensed their dispatchers for 6 years. So that was a big wake-up call to me that I couldn't trust my own 911 board. And we spent probably 2 years dealing with 911 and uncovering stuff in Edgar County. That's how I got started.
And then you met up with Jeanne. Jeanne had a similar situation at a local board where he got frustrated with what he found as obstacles to getting information. Jeanne, how did you come into this whole?
Yeah, I got lied to by the school board, the local school board. And then Kirk and I was at a celebration dinner for a new sheriff that got elected. Just happened to be sitting right across the table, never saw each other before. He mentioned something about 911, was telling me about 911. I told him about the school board issue, and we just right then said, let's do something about it. And we did. And here we are today.
Well, it's amazing because you're not lawyers. You're not trained policy experts per se. You just have used the tools that are available to any citizen to keep track of their government, but you've taken it to the next level. You actually follow through. You don't just send one FOIA. If you don't get the information you want, you send another FOIA, and then you'll send separate FOIAs to other entities and see if the FOIAs match up, right? So you do a lot of investigative work for which you're not even really trained for, but you've learned over the last now 10, 11 years how to do that work. Is that right?
Correct. A lot of times, if we FOIA something from a municipality or a community college, and we FOIA the same thing from the whatever state board of elections or anybody that gives out grants or the local records office, they won't match up. And one key issue where they did match up was that College of DuPage.
Right.
Well, okay, let's go there then. So, I actually don't remember the first time that we met, but I do remember having you into my offices when Northern Illinois University was, their university president was absolutely scamming the taxpayer in a number of ways. We went
That's putting it mildly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and by the way, there was a scathing investigative report done by the
OIG.
the OIG, and basically said exactly what you had found out years before. The OIG comes in, finds out the same thing that you guys had found out, and what happens with him? He ends up getting like a $600,000 severance pay. I mean, this is outrageous. So you come into the College of DuPage because, of course, the taxpayers are up in arms when they find out he tried to essentially buy Quinn's support for a $20 million grant to the College of DuPage. By mentioning him favorably during an election year in 2014. Kathy Hamilton uncovers that email. She writes about it. And then we started to uncover more and more malfeasance in that. It ends up with Bruder basically getting a board payout of $713,000 in severance pay. The taxpayers are up in arms. You have 500 people coming to these meetings. But that's not enough. People showing up to a meeting is not enough. The work you did to uncover and FOIA what was really going on really made the difference. Can you tell us a little bit more about College of DuPage and some of the most alarming things that you found?
Well, I think the amazing part of that whole ordeal was in 2013, there was actually a board member raising the concerns of the appearance of pay to play with foundation board members. And the communications, reflected that there was a concern, and the response from the president was inconsistent with state law. He basically tried to create this facade that everything was fine. There was nothing to look at. And after, taking his words and comparing it to the law, we found he wasn't being truthful with his own trustees. Communications were uncovered, and one thing led to another. And I think it was upwards of 50% of their foundation members had no bid contracts with the college. And that was a huge red flag. And that's one of the things that very trustee was talking about. That was a problem, and nobody knew this stuff was going on because nobody was paying attention.
So the board members weren't paying attention. Let's be clear here. In fact, what was obvious now in looking backwards is that they weren't even following their own policies. I think that didn't they lose about $2.2 million on illegal investment practices against board policy, but nobody was doing the right thing. And the reason I'm actually having you guys on today is because we are sitting the day before municipal elections, the day before you're going to elect new board members to the College of DuPage, the day before you're going to elect people to your school board, to your local governments, to your cities, to townships, and you name it. And you guys have literally found malfeasance in every single local government entity and even at the state level. Am I correct?
Pretty much so. It's actually, it's hard to not find it.
So what is your record, speaking of that? You have a record. I know you have an idea of how many people you have been able to expose the malfeasance, and so they've either resigned from office, decided not to run again, or they've been indicted.
I think we're up to right at 425 people.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And some of that has actually led to criminal indictments, correct?
Correct. I think we're at 168 or 169 criminal indictments.
From the work that you have done?
Correct. Directly or indirectly. We've got one down in Bloomington, Diane Benjamin, who we worked with extensively and helped do a lot of things, from a watchdog standpoint. She was blowing the whistle on their local city council for, John, over a year?
Yeah.
She's a CPA. And she said these numbers don't match. The Coliseum was under contract, was supposed to pay a percentage of all concession sales. And there was nothing coming into the city. Well, long story short, she ended up getting 111 indictments in the city of Bloomington against 5 of the managers of the Coliseum. So when we say 168, I wish we could say that was all directly from us. 111 of those were indirectly through our work helping her.
That's amazing. That's
And
amazing.
there's also,
yes, go ahead, John.
there was also legislative action that spurred out of our one in particular was out of Northern Illinois University that you mentioned earlier, where employees were charged and convicted of basically theft. If you look up NIU coffee fund or something like that, it'll come up news articles. And then after they pled guilty or were convicted, the college paid their defense attorney fees and kept them working, and they were convicted of a crime against the college. And then a senator immediately threw that on the Senate floor, and within a couple of days got that bill passed and signed by the governor, prohibiting that type of action, prohibiting a college or a university from paying defense fees for their employees that got convicted or pled guilty of a crime against the college.
Well, that's just so obvious to regular taxpayers that you're not going to use taxpayer money to defend people in their criminal pursuits. It's just so obvious. But you speak to the things that you've done. You guys, your real work, even at the College of DuPage, which in full disclosure, I was very much a part of handling some of that stuff. I mean, you know, that led to reform, state reform. That led to actual legislation being passed that capped severance payouts, that capped the length of a contract that you could have, that audited the College of DuPage, and it ended up in like, I think, a couple 100-page audit of the College of DuPage. And there was one thing that they were doing wrong after another thing they were doing wrong, and in some cases illegally. And so it was a huge boon, I thought, at that time for transparency for taxpayers. So, but that was your work. It wasn't, I'm sorry, the Chicago Tribune's work. It wasn't the Daily Herald's work. You all started the whole ball rolling. How many other times can you point to where it's been your work and not local media's work that have really made a difference?
I would say almost every time, because and moving away from the large metropolitan areas down into western and southern Illinois, local media, they don't have the stomach for reporting on things that local government is doing wrong.
So, John, you guys use the power of FOIA a lot. In fact, it's probably one of the most effective tools that we have as citizens in our toolbox is to FOIA information. And when particular entities refuse to give up the information, you go after them and you sue them. Is this something that happened in Carlinville, something similar to that? Is that what happened there?
Yes, and I wouldn't say we're going after them. We're protecting our right to receive public records. That's written in state law. So yes, we sued them for public records, mainly credit card statements and meeting minutes from an electoral board that they didn't want to give up. 2 years later, they ended up settling and paying our attorney $90,000. And we got the credit card statements. There wasn't really anything in the statements worth writing. And I don't understand why they would even refuse to give us those to begin with. And the other issue in Carlinville is they partnered with a private company and another small municipality and opened up another private company to contract from it for city water. The statutes and the Constitution prescribe 3 or 4 or 5 ways that a municipality can provide water to their residents. Opening up a private company is not one of those ways.
So it seems to me, though, that you folks, time and time again, you and Kirk know more about what the law says than the people. And so oftentimes you have said that your mantra is says who and with what proof, right? So when you get an elected official who is supposed to know what's going on, or in some cases their own legal representation, you say back to them, says who and with what proof.
Yeah, and a lot of times their legal representation is trying to form or trying to justify what the public body wants to do or not want to do, right, instead of reading the law and telling them, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't do that. They're trying to form some type of justification as to why they can or why they can't.
So you two have actually, I find this interesting. So in the Carlinville case, you actually did hire a lawyer and you were able to recoup your legal fees of $90,000. So the taxpayers whose elected representation, your elected officials, think about this, because you got elections tomorrow. Let's remember why we're talking about this. The elected representation tried to hide information from a FOIA request that was authorized to be given to the public. And they did it for 2 years, and they created a $90,000 tax bill in a very, very tiny community, Carlinville.
And that's just to us. That's not paying their own attorney.
Yeah, plus their own attorney fees. Good point.
And the sad part of this is we have on record that one of the attorneys said they'll get those records over my dead body.
Oh my God. I mean, you've heard it all. And what's impressive about you is you don't always hire an attorney. You sometimes go out on your own and act as your own legal representation in these FOIA cases. You've learned how to do it, even though you're not lawyers. And in many cases, you've beaten the municipality's lawyers or the school board's lawyers, correct?
Well, yeah, we used to do it on our own, which is pro se, but when we formed the corporation, we can no longer do that. Kirk has a good story of winning in a lawsuit on pro se when we first started.
So that's a good point. You incorporate as a 501c3. So folks, if you like the work, C4, if you like the work that the Edgar County Watchdogs are doing, please donate to them. You can go to their website, which is called Edgar County Watchdogs, or is it also Illinois Leaks? Do you do both?
Yeah.
Yes.
Either one, IllinoisLeaks.com or EdgarCountyWatchdogs.com.
And Kirk, talk to us a little bit about how active is your tip line? Has it slowed down at all?
No, we ran an article the other day called The Silly Season. Right now, the number of tips coming in because there's an election is just mind-blowing. And we're really glad that a lot of people are starting to pay attention. They need to pay attention from the day these people are sworn in office, not 2 weeks before they're sworn in office.
Right.
You know, it's too little too late. You need to monitor these people on a regular basis. And when the election comes up, you have 2 years worth of information as to what these people are doing. And then the voters can be informed. But right now, it's just too short notice on a lot of these tips.
But I'm looking at that article, and so you highlight the Algonquin Township Road District Highway Commissioner, Derek Lee. So you talk about him. You talk about the DuPage Township Supervisor, Gary Marshke. He's running for Township Supervisor. He's denied sexual harassment allegations lodged against him when he was employed by the state treasurer. Court records conflict with this claim. It goes on and on. So you can read all this information at EdgarCountyWatchdogs.com. You highlight the Arcola, Illinois mayoral race. You highlight the Avon Township Supervisor, the Maine Township Trustee race. There's a lot of information here that citizens can just go into your search box, type in the local entity they're concerned about, and see what pops up that you guys have been investigating.
Yeah, there's just too much to cover. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. There's something going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Arcola case, as an example, one of the gals that wants to be the mayor is in a bar dancing on the bar. Calls 911.
Well, there's nothing illegal about that. There's nothing illegal with dancing on the bar. What's the matter?
No, there's not. But at the same time, she calls 911 in the middle of a traffic stop because she didn't like the way it was going. So they ended up arresting her for a false 911 call. And, so now she's facing charges on that, but she wants to be mayor. And
you can't make this up. You cannot make it up.
No, you can't make this stuff up. The Algonquin Township, Derek Lee, that's the son-in-law of Bob Miller. Remember the famous Bob Miller, Algonquin Township Road Commissioner, the family dynasty, 3 generations, they've ran that place. And there's people that say, well, Derek didn't do anything wrong. Derek took his wife and child to New Orleans on the backs of the taxpayer, and he's got his Juris doctorate in law. He graduated NIU. He never practiced law, but as a graduate of law school, he doesn't know that it's not legal to take your family on taxpayer, conferences like that.
What? That happens everywhere.
It does happen everywhere. And until prosecutors start doing their job and holding these people accountable, nothing's going to change in Illinois. Our prosecutors have failed us across the state.
Oh, there's so many cases that they will not touch. Either they say they don't have the time or the resources for it, but public corruption in the state of Illinois is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And it's given us a bad reputation. It's why you pay more in taxes. What was the corruption tax penned at? I think $500 million over the last couple of years, 2 decades or so. I mean, it's enormous.
Look at our Auditor General, Jeanne.
Yes, our Auditor General, Frank Martino. You folks were the first ones to actually write stories about Frank Martino, Auditor General. Let's see, in 20 years, he had over $220,000 worth of vehicle expenses on his car for campaign expenses when most of the time he didn't even have an opponent during election season. He was taking cash out of the bank and with no accountability. Anybody they want to could fill up at Happy Service Station down, I forgot the town, right?
In LaSalle.
In LaSalle. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I was one of 10 people who voted against making him Auditor General, knowing that I did not trust this guy at all. Just a month later, all this stuff comes out. So they could not even take the time to investigate his campaign funds. And it was obvious anybody looking at his campaign funds could have known that this was complete fraudulent activity on his part, and nothing has happened to it. He has trounced himself into like $160,000 job as the state auditor general. When he decides to retire, he spiked his pension coming from a state rep position to the auditor general position. His starting pension, I think, is going to be like $138,000. I mean, it's criminal what he did, and they went after other people for the same sort of malfeasance, and they have not touched Frank Martino, even though multiple Republicans have asked him to resign over the last few years. But you guys broke that story.
It's pretty amazing that he hasn't been prosecuted yet, which makes us wonder, whether he has flipped and turned state's evidence on Madigan, because, he was very tight with Madigan. There's a lot of key information that, I'm sure he was able to share, because he was under investigation. The U.S. attorney was, dealing with that, and his PR person said they were cooperating. Well, they must have really cooperated, because he didn't get charged, and the courts have said that he, used campaign money for personal stuff for over 15 years. They indicted Sam McCann, for about half that amount. So where's the indictment on our Auditor General? I'll bet you he's got a plea deal for cooperation. That's just my speculation.
Hopefully we find out. But sometimes these investigations, and you've been a part of them, they're going on 6 years now in many cases.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what, you have a target-rich environment here, though, in Illinois. What are some of the other cases that you found interesting or illuminating that local people should be aware of that are happening around the state?
I think one of the most interesting that's going on right now is the sheriffs selling seized weapons. And why this is interesting, years ago, we uncovered our county sheriff was doing it, and he sold weapons with filed off serial numbers. Now, that's a federal crime. Nobody did a thing. We caught several sheriffs selling seized weapons. Nobody has done a thing. Well, Shelby County, we had caught.
But Biden's going to fix that, right? Isn't Biden going to fix that? Because
now this gets good, because I think you were in the legislature when Brad brought a bill forward.
Brad Hallbrook, that's Brad Hallbrook, state representative. Mm-hmm.
And it was basically to allow seized weapons to be sold through a normal sheriff's auction, just like any other piece of property. Mm-hmm. Had to be done legally. With bipartisan support out of the House, it passed. In fact, most Republicans had left for the day, and it still passed with Democrat support. Kwame Raoul was the senator. He hijacked the bill and stopped it in the Senate, wouldn't let it go forward. He becomes Attorney General, and John and I met him at a meet and greet at the Attorney General's office in Springfield, and I asked him, what are we going to do about this problem of gun sales with sheriffs? We won't make it legal, but nobody gets prosecuted for it. So what are we supposed to do? And he basically, party line, I can't get involved. That's up to state's attorneys to prosecute. Well, lo and behold, in Shelby County, we've got the same thing going on. The state's attorney recused herself, and the prosecution is in the hands of the attorney general for a charging decision. It's been there for 4 months, and they still can't decide whether to charge a sheriff for selling guns illegally. And I'll bet you dinner he will not be charged because Kwame Raoul is not going to prosecute public corruption.
But, I thought the Chicago Democrats hated illegal gun sales.
Well, it's a Democrat sheriff.
Oh, that's the problem. That is the problem.
I mean, I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, and corruption takes a political bent here. Make no doubt about it. The Democrats were more than happy to support my College DuPage reform bills. Why? Because DuPage at that time was a Republican county, and anytime you can go after a Republican for malfeasance, then you can do it. I don't care who you are, what party you're part of. I wanted all the public corruption to end.
Correct.
And I showed that I wasn't just going to hide from Republican malfeasance, and the board was controlled by Republicans at that time, by the way. And we still went after them. And what did we do? We put in Clean Slate 1, Clean Slate 2, Clean Slate 3. Now we're up to Clean Slate 4. So if you're listening in, you got to vote for Mano and Holen for COD board trustee and Sajdak. They'll be joined with other Republicans on the board, and we'll keep this going. But this is why we're talking, gentlemen. Who you elect locally matters.
Well, the other thing with the elections, we don't get into a whole lot of that side of it because we are a nonprofit. But
right.
The important part of this upcoming election with COD, you've got candidates out there contemplating basically paying the former president off and letting that lawsuit go away because it's costing the college money. Well, it's costing the college money from a standpoint of an insurance premium. The insurance company has picked up the entire tab. And people, these candidates that are out there saying it's going to be an expense to the taxpayers to continue to fight, it's covered under the insurance. The most they're going to see is an increase in their premium, and that may be a few $1,000s, but it's a drop in the bucket. If we don't stand on principle and hold these people accountable, then nothing ever changes.
Let's go back to Dr. Bruder. Literally wiped his laptop clean when he was told it was part of evidence and that they were going to pick it up. He wiped his laptop clean. He destroyed public evidence, never prosecuted for that simple crime. It's outrageous what he's gotten away with. It's outrageous. It's gone on for 6 years. And the last thing I want them to do as a taxpayer is to settle the Dr. Bruder case. I want that guy prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think you'll see that happen. But, in regards to him resetting his laptop, he did what's called a factory reset, which basically scrubs it and brings it back to new. One of our first FOIAs to them was for a copy of all their record destruction certificates. So here we are looking at what they gave us, thinking, okay, well, now we know what we can ask for. We know what's been destroyed, what hasn't. Well, lo and behold, we're finding out we're not getting emails. So we contacted the Secretary of State and asked for the same request. We want, what did the college submit for records, record destruction? The college failed to provide me one sheet of paper, and it was for the destruction of all emails beyond a year old. Now, why would the college hide that from us? But they did, and they scrubbed emails as fast as you can imagine. But how we've gotten our hands on some of them is just a blessing. But we've got some emails that have never been seen, and we got them through FOIA with different agencies, and now we've got a paper trail. So FOIA has actually been more powerful than subpoenas.
Good for you. That's amazing. You guys are doing really, really wonderful work in the state of Illinois. Let's wrap it up. You guys have done some other stuff. Like you said that you were just down in Florida talking with Real Clear Politics. What's that about? Can you say?
John, yeah, sure. John, you want to cover that?
Well, you can cover. We just basically talked about what we do, how we do it, and where we wanted to go from here.
Great. You'll be a
we
template for other states, hopefully, to do the same thing.
Yeah, we did miss the cold weather and snowstorm here when we were down there.
You deserved a break.
Yeah, we saw a need early on to train other people, and we formed what's called American Watchdogs. And American Watchdogs is a training organization that basically teaches people how to do what the Edgar County Watchdogs do. And we do that all over the country. So our trip to Florida was about taking that model to a national basis, to where we can have a watchdog training organization in every state. We've been to several states doing training through that organization. And our goal is to get the people out there that truly want to step up to the plate and start holding local government accountable. We believe we've got the best model to do that.
God bless you. You guys also have a license plate app, govplates.com, where you can, if you happen to see somebody's public vehicle parked at a place where it shouldn't be, let's say a bar at, on a Friday night or something, you can actually literally type in that government plate and find out who it belongs to and who's there.
Right.
Correct.
And that came about when just what you said, we noticed and we kept getting reports of actually a township road commissioner using his vehicle when he shouldn't be using it. And since there's no requirement to put the unit of government on these vehicles, there's really no requirement to have a municipal plate. You couldn't find out who operated the vehicle. So we just opened up the website and FOIA'd the license plate information from the Secretary of State. And we got it all in a database and you can just search for it. Unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful in convincing the legislature to mandate government license plates on government vehicles and mandate at least a sticker on the front or back that says what public body it belongs to. I think they need to mandate it because a municipal plate is a whole lot cheaper than paying $149 a year every year for a regular civilian license plate. So it's a money saver for local government, and it helps citizens identify what local government it is. But they don't
Makes
want to do it
sense
for
to
some
me.
reason.
Makes total sense to me. Well,
Have you followed what's going on down in DuPage Township, Jeannie?
Let's talk about that a little bit. I have followed it. Obviously, I am associated with Alicia Benford, who is running for supervisor down there. She is a personal friend. I am supporting her in that campaign effort. And she is a go-getter. She uncovered a lot of malfeasance with the old supervisor, really scamming taxpayers, taking pay ahead of time, totally in violation of all sorts of laws. And so she's got to fight her hand. And I basically said, hey, you call Kirk and John and see if they can help you out. And you guys have been helping Alicia out with that effort. What's going on?
Well, I think I've seen everything until what we've seen this year. We've got a candidate that's running against her. We talked about him in that article. He actually said during a Meet the Candidate forum, they've been getting sued every year for excess taxation. Every year for the last 4 years. And they've got another suit that will get filed because of, again, excess taxation.
That means they're literally taxing more than they're authorized by law to do.
There's a statute now in the townships that we helped get passed. Representative Hallbrook was the chief sponsor on that, was a 2.5 times multiplier, meaning you can't have more than 2.5 times your 3-year average expenses. It's pretty simple. Well,
yeah, because government should not hoard taxes against its citizens just because they want to. That's right. Right.
Well, this candidate literally said he wants to fight these lawsuits all the way through litigation because he believes it's just a scam that the state's attorney has told him and the attorney general's told him, which I don't believe either, that these are just scams for lawyers to make money. Well, lawyers can't file a lawsuit that's frivolous. They face sanctions if they do that. What is happening? This guy has no clue what general assistance is all about and how it's being abused, and he just wants to let it litigate. I just can't imagine. Why not just fix the problem and don't tax so much? No, he wants to continue to let the lawsuits go, and this guy wants people to vote for him.
Well, we're rooting for Alicia, and we appreciate the work that you've done there. I mean, and you drive up from, let's face it, you guys drive up from Central Illinois to attend board meetings, to speak on behalf of people, to make sure that you are at College DuPage meetings, I think, every meeting for an entire year.
For over 2 years.
For over 2 years. And at your, for part of that was initially at your own expense. Fortunately, you've got that 501c4 that we hope people will donate to help you out with that. But I mean, I appreciate the work you've done. You are heroes in the state of Illinois. You are a bright, shining light. And we plan to do a couple things here. One, we want to have you in for that watchdog training So everybody pay attention to Breakthrough Ideas for when we get that training set up with them so you can become a watchdog in your own community. And we're going to continue to highlight your work because people need to know what you've done so that they can replicate what you are doing at their own local level. So thank you so much, John and Kirk, for coming in the Spotlight interview this time, especially. And as a reminder, we hope to get this interview out before the close of business tomorrow, before polls close tomorrow at 7 p.m. If we can, we want you to pay, make sure that you do vote. If we can't get it out and you see this afterwards, start paying attention to local government. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on.
Thanks for having us.